Well, I've been to Egypt recently. I take people to that wonderful ancient site. And in the 1920s, there were two very famous French diviners. And they were called de Balazan and Chaumery. And they went around ancient Egypt, and they were noticing that in the Valley of the Kings, you always have this type of energy device. Yeah. And they noticed that some mummies in the Valley of the Kings were buried with this energy device close to their heart chakra. So they thought, well, what is it? Today, we know them as Isis pendulum and the Karnak pendulum, okay? These aren't the pendulums of normal dowsing. If anybody's interested, I haven't managed to get my table yet, but I've stashed all my pendulums in the far end. And anybody interested, when I do find out where my table is or come to my workshop, I'll show you these energy devices. So knock on wood there. So anyway, they were noticing these energy devices, and they thought, well, the colors of the sun are coming through, the colors of the earth are coming through that way. Why don't we play around with the force of the negative green and see what negative green does? And Chaumery was in his laboratory, and this is dowsing history, like I mentioned on the panel about an hour ago, went down in history. And this is what Himmler was really looking for in places. It could be very powerful as a weapon, for instance. But what they noticed was Chaumery filled an object so much with the negative green that he was found 1 week later completely mummified with no smell of fermentation. Yeah? So it went down in dowsing history, what's going on here? So with these pendulums, they realized they could suspend the life force of something. Okay? Now, if you can suspend the life force of something, you could stop cancer in its tracks. You don't have to take the tumor out, you suspend its life force. So this is what they were doing in France at the turn of the centuries, and realized that the ancient Egyptians could manipulate the force field. Because to esoteric dowsers, for instance, you know, we're taught that red is the base chakra and the color of the rainbows, don't we? You know what I mean. In esoteric dowsing terms, you cannot physically ever have one color by itself. It's impossible because it's a prism coming down from the sun, and the sun contains all of those lights. Do you see what I mean? So to some esoteric dowsers, the base chakra has all of the colors, including negative green, but red dominates, and so on and so forth. Do you see what I mean? So you can start with using these pendulums to put in different colors if they're programmed to do that. And just by itself, the Isis pendulum here, that's a 4-bar one. I've got a very powerful 6-bar ones with me, completely handmade to the ancient proportions of ancient Egypt. If you get this spinning just round like this, it's generating ultra-white energy field that can cleanse and charge up food, water, your body, your chakras, and the list goes on. Okay, so these energy devices are more than pendulums. They really are. They can literally allow us to help us to self-heal, I should say. And there's a wonderful temple in ancient Egypt called Kom Ombo, temple space. And what I want to show you here, can you see these two shapes here? That's the Karnak pendulum I showed you earlier, but from which flows the Ankh, the symbol of healing energy. Can you see that? Going all the way down like that. And that's because that shape generates the positive ray of negative green. So the ancient Egyptians and the English as well, and the American people, I believe, were able to manipulate the colors of earth energies and the colors of Ra coming down with particular types of dowsing devices. So I'm going to return now to the elongated skulls of Stonehenge to finish off their story, okay? Now, this is the High Queen, I call her. She could have been a priestess, but with a very long skull. Matches the skulls of Malta, okay? And has anybody been to the Hypogeum in Malta? Oh, what a wonder, isn't it? It's incredible, yeah? All of this masonry, 2 stories down in the earth, cut out of solid limestone. That's what the pyramids are made of. And it never fails to surprise me when I take people to Malta. There is one of the chambers in the Hypogeum, like this is what I mean by chamber. Can you see what I mean? These sections cut out in the chalk bedrock. One of them is called the Oracle Room. And if I was in the Oracle Room and I said, Maria, it would echo in hundreds of chambers all around me, my name. Yeah, it's an absolute wonder. You would think, therefore, that when you go there on your tour, which you have to have the Heritage Malta guiding you round, telling you their nonsense from the get-go on the headphones, so you're interacting with e-smog and not the energies, you think they would say, this is the Oracle Room. And if you said something here in vibrant frequency, it would register around all of the chambers. No, they leave that bit out. Yeah? So if you want to really get a tour going in Malta, my top tip is sneak off the back, everybody's walking, go through there and go power, 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 like that. I actually got, asked to go after doing that once. But that's a selling point. You think that would be incredible, wouldn't you? But that's what they don't do. They've also made a new visitors' room in Malta, and these had these long-skulled priestesses in there. So I got in touch with Heritage Malta. Can I come and visit these long skulls? No long skulls here. I think you're wrong. I said, but I've actually got the original archaeological report that your top archaeologist wrote, and there's 10 in your care. Can I see one, please? No long skulls here. And they went out of their way to send me every single picture of a round skull that you could see. Yeah? So I thought, well, that's okay. I'm not going to get in there. So the next time I went to the new visitor center, which was 2 years ago with a group, I was really saddened because in comic font, in a comic mocking font, they put long skulls, aliens, exclamation mark. Yeah? So I complained to Heritage Malta that why are you saying that about our ancient ancestors? And they just said, well, we don't want that connection at all now, do we? I thought, no, you obviously don't, but perhaps everybody else here would. Could be argued. Now, when we come to the demise of the long-skulled people, this is one man from a Longbow in Gloucestershire that he too had been beheaded. Yeah, and this is, again, Oxford wouldn't let me take too many photographs, and I had to draw that out because they refused me to publish some of the pictures of the long skull people. So where are they today? Yeah, if they built the spiritual capital of the ancient world, Stonehenge, where are they? It's almost like they were so quiet on the earth, they've disappeared, and they made these wonderful horned monuments, yeah, like this. See what I mean by being elongated in shape, with chambers that you can enter, all of which are to sound frequencies, earth energies, you know the sort of thing, with a massive lay going down the middle there. And placed on the front of this, what's called a false entrance, were 2 skulls, like guardians. One had a round skull, and one had a long skull, eternally looking towards the north. So, where are they? This is a skull that was from Cambridge that showed a very big indentation to part of the long skull, and it was a mother. She was holding on to her child, and she got attacked and literally bumped on the head. And the daughter as well, who was close by her side, she too had this massive lesion here, where she too had faced some sort of conflict. So I really do think in 2500 BC, everything changed around Stonehenge. It really did. The long skull people who built Stonehenge, and you'll hear other people say, oh, they were giants. The evidence in the landscape suggests they were actually quite short, 5 feet. The round-skulled people of the continent, called the Beaker culture, that moved into the British Isles in 2500 BC, were very tall. They're called the Beaker culture. And this is a long skull here that was completely smashed in, and he had defense wounds like that cut across his hand. So in the Bronze Age, what happened was the round-skulled people came in across Europe, and they built only round barrows to house the dead. And there was no long-skulled person in the Stonehenge environs ever found in these round monuments. I think the shape of the skull influenced the style of monument. But when we look to in the far corner over here, this is the long skull of a long man, very narrow face, put against the size of a normal average man. That's the difference with the kind of shape of the skull. But that doesn't answer for where they are now. And a bit like what happened in South America, I think had similar overtones in the Stonehenge environs. Disease was brought in by a new culture, and not only were they fighting for the capital, which was Stonehenge, elsewhere in the country that wasn't happening, or in pockets in Europe, just around the Stonehenge environs. They probably brought disease in, and some of them were then into marrying, because you've got a middle-size skull, but predominantly the round-skulled people came into being dominant in the land. Then they took the centers of all the sites the long skull people built and built stone circles around them. Because people look at Stonehenge and Aveburyhenge, that massive henge I showed you, and you have different cultures making different sites. Phase 1 of Stonehenge and phase 1 of Avebury was Neolithic, long-skulled. Phase 2, 3, and 4 were round-skulled. So that's like me looking back at 1066 when the French came in with the Normans and were attacking the English people. That's the difference in the timeline between the elongated people of Stonehenge and also the round-skulled people. So we need to think about these timelines like that. So I hope during this presentation, which I'll end with shortly, so that if you want, you can ask me some questions. For example, we'll have the last sort of 20 minutes or so with questions. I really wanted to say there's far, far more to the ancient landscape than just lays. Okay, and to give you an insight into the kind of matrix behind sites. And I will be visiting and I want to understand the US sites like the Anasazi power places. I'll do that before contact next year, and go into Ohio Serpent Mound with expert guides, and to America's Stonehenge on October 2019, and you can find out more about me at the aveburyexperience.co.uk or esotericcollege.com. And connect with me, just go on that site and you can email me. So, like I said, I really do hope that when we think of Earth energies in the near future, maybe, you can be galvanized to think of lots of different layers and lots of different things going on, and realize that there was a long-lost civilization that laid out all of these systems and found these power places. So I'll end there, and I'll be open up to questions in a moment. So any questions? You can go up to the mic.
Can you take advantage of PowerPoints that you find around you, but not necessarily building 6-foot stones?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, you can. If you find these places, you can utilize them to literally interact with your own body. So that's a really good question. Yes, you can.
Thank you very much. I just want to get clear about the northeast-southwest line and the southeast-northwest line. Are these positive places to be, or should you stay away from them?
You should stay away from them. That's the Curry grid.
Thank you.
And to stay away from that, yeah, highly charged with electricity. And if you live above crystals or uranium or deep underground water, then what happens is that you will be even more charged with the geology of your space. Do you see what I mean? Because it will interact with the crystals and the iron deposits as well.
Which lines should you be on?
The earth
North
currents,
and south only, or like?
Yeah, the earth currents are the best to be above, or the positive yin water. They're the best places to be above.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi. How do you feel about what people are doing with the covering over of cement of the Earth's energies and how that's affecting? And could you talk about the 5G? I did. Do you want me to repeat?
Yeah, if you would.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
How do you feel the cementing over the Earth's energies is affecting us all? And could you talk about the 5G?
Well, you know, again, even if we look to our historical past, the Chinese geomants would call that amputation. So it'd be a bit like me cutting off your leg. Are you going to be able to walk after that? So the more that we kind of urbanize certain energies without leaving free air energies for Gaia to breathe, the more that we're creating a bad future for ourselves and our children and our children's children. So we need to take responsibility for the land. In ancient China, you couldn't build before the Chinese geomants said, that's okay, that's not okay, that's okay, that's not okay. So that's what we need to. We need to take responsibility for the land upon which we live. And with 5G, that's just going to be an environmental catastrophe in terms of earth energy and people.
Hello. Hello. Since '87, I have been feeling earthquakes, and so what will happen is my body will shake, my mind will go blank, and I'll get numbers on the Richter scale. Unfortunately, I didn't keep a proper journal because it'll be different parts of my body. Can you kind of enlighten me a little bit more about what might be happening, or what, like within, how that's happening?
Yeah, I think one thing, I mean, now there's probably a few things going on, but it's been found that animals and very sensitive human beings can hear infrasound. Just before an earthquake, the background Hertz frequency changes and you get a blast of infrasound, and then that sound carries through the earth energy system. And I think you're becoming very sensitive to the earth energy system and infrasound. So if you are around a lot of megaliths, you may even hear the sound of the stones.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I usually feel them a week before they happen.
Well, that's a beautiful sensitivity to the earth. And like I say, I think a part of you would be like the long-skulled people that could sense infrasound.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
What you said about the long-skulled people having 2 crown chakras made me think about trephination. And then you kept pointing out like maybe trauma blows to the skull. I wonder how it's difficult to tell the difference between blunt force trauma to the skull and trephination and even decapitation, because we know that Neolithic people always like decapitated them to set out their bones to the vultures for their ancestors as they died.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. It's really easy to tell anything that's been healed in tissue on the skull. So if you've had an operation that's taken out a round section of your skull, it would show healing. If you have been murdered, it will show no evidence of healing whatsoever. So you can determine if that has been a successful operation or etc. It will literally show quite clearly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Maria. A quick question about the subtle energies involved in ley lines and their intersecting vortex points. Do you think that these subtle energies are mainly scalar longitudinal waves type energy? Because I know electromagnetism is involved, but I don't think that's the full picture of the type of energy.
No, exactly. And, a lot of people do feel they are scalar, waves of, for sure. We're really, I think it's like we're all pioneers at the moment, trying to figure out the ancient past. And when lots of people come together, you get lots of answers. One person or one author by themselves can be a good thing, but can also be a bad thing because they make their theory fit to their ideas, yeah? And that's where we need to question and question and question, because I think it's going to take a whole load of disciplines coming together to unravel the ancient past.
Thank you.
Hi, Maria. So the long skull, you said they were short and stocky, and you said the giants came later, is that right?
Yeah, in the Bronze Age, there's been a recent DNA study done from quite a few collaborations across Europe of DNA sampling. And it was shown that the DNA sampling of the immigrants coming into the ancient British Isles were predominantly from the Netherlands, and they were much taller, and they were much kind of slimmer to a certain degree than the kind of more robust, long-skulled people. So that was a very successful DNA study that was done, but they refused to do the long skulls. They only did the round skull people to find out what was in the average English person's DNA. And it was from the Netherlands.
So the builders of Stonehenge were
Long-skulled.
And so when they say giants built Stonehenge, they just don't have the timing right, or the...
Yeah, because the larger, taller people came into the British Isles in 2500 BC, and they built round barrows, and they put themselves into the round barrows, because you will never find a long skull in a round barrow. And they are completely different, taller, and they have different DNA. So you have two cultures, two civilizations, maybe two races of human beings.
Got it. And then what do you suggest to do about 5G, just to live properly?
I think we need to protest.
Right.
Yeah, we need to protest and say no, no, no.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And until we do that, and like I say, what we're trying to do in the Avebury and Stonehenge environs is galvanize warrior type of people to say that we're not having it, and there will be a massive protest. Yeah,
Great. Thank
because
you.
we don't want 5G near ancient sites.
Well, we don't want it near us either,
No,
right?
exactly, and that's
We're an ancient site.
absolutely. Always thinking about standing stones.
Hi. I think at Antibury there's a red spring and a white spring. Can you talk about
Glastonbury.
that a little bit? Glastonbury. Can
Yeah.
you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, at Glastonbury you do have the red spring, and it's called the red spring because you have mineral-rich iron waters, okay? That's said to be healing and very beneficial to our physical and emotional bodies. So that's the red spring. And there was always a pagan site, and the white spring represented higher consciousness and is full of calcium, so it's called the red and white because of its mineral content. Easy to divine with a pendulum what type of mineral water it is. Then in paganism times, you would mix the waters and you would wash in the waters. And then the Christians came along and said it's the blood of Jesus and it's the sweat of Jesus. So you had a kind of old pagan story becoming Christianized by the influx of Christianity. But the whole idea of the waters is when you have a water under pressure, and beneath the Glastonbury Tor you have water under pressure, it starts to change its chemical components away from H2O into another component of pressurized water, which is very, very galvanized with energy and very healing. And that's the red and white springs. Water under pressure is amazing. Hi, Karen.
It's good to see you.
Thank you.
I just had a quick question. Thank you for allowing us to ask. With the Isis pendulum as the energy device, when you say to use it over your chakras, oh, I'm so sorry. With the Isis pendulum, when you say to use them on your chakras, as you would say the energy device, how can you do so safely without causing any problems?
Because it's constantly generating ultra-white. That's the frequency that style of pendulum is designed to by the ancient French diviners through Egypt. So by itself, it's quite powerful, and you can cleanse the chakras, but ideally, is what we did in Egypt, you go through all of the colors, and then it becomes very, very powerful. But the Isis pendulum will react to whether a chakra is out of balance, and then it will just start moving by itself as it sweeps and cleanses that. So by itself, using ultra-white, it's perfectly safe. You can charge up water, you can charge up your food, and you can work through the aura and the chakra system just by letting the pendulum do what it wants. And if you've got the pendulum here, what happens is, if it's an unbalanced area, it will start to sweep and react, and then it will calm down and go still. Then you can go across the body, and where it reacts, you just let that pendulum do what it wants to do in effect. So yeah, it can be very safe just to do those type of jobs with.
I just mean as far as so that it won't rip your aura. It's not gonna it's safe in that regard.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi.
Okay. I have a question. I want to buy land, some land to live on, like an acre in Northern California. How would you do on your own figure out if it's a good place to be? Like, you know.
Yeah, okay. Well, the first sort of tip that most geomancers will look at is the geology of your land. Are you above hard rock, soft rock, that sort of thing? Is there any underground water there? If it is, that's good to put a well there, but you wouldn't want to live above that. And then try to find out, is there any positive earth energy there? If it is positive earth energy, is it energizing or relaxing? It is 9 times out of 10, it's going to be one or the other. Yeah. So that's what I would do. I'd start decoding the land to see what types of energies are there.
With a tool?
With a dowsing tool, you could use a dowsing rod, which is very easy once you program it to something like that, or a pendulum. Now, let's say nothing's ideal half the time, yeah? But let's say you've got your land and you've got good pockets and bad pockets, for example. What are you going to do about the bad pockets, you know? And you can resolve that with devices like the Isis pendulum we were just discussing. You can sweep that and keep it nice and clear. So you can work with good and bad. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Okay, because
do you
it's
see
not
what
always
I
going
mean?
to be good. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very easy to do with a minimal amount of training. And that's what I'm going to be doing at the workshop. You could get a rod to point you in the right direction.
You're amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yay.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know if you mentioned it, but any ideas how Stonehenge was built, how they moved those stones?
Sorry?
Any ideas how they was built, how they moved the stones?
How did they move the stones? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Do you know what? I think it was a couple of things. I did some experiments with using some weight-detecting device that pilots use when they check G-force. Yeah, because I know a few pilots. Because on the energy bands that I showed you, if you can remember those 5 bands and 2 below, band number 3, according to anecdotal reports back, can make you feel very heavy or very light, Okay, so I thought, why don't we test that out? And it came out in some of the tests, it can make you very light. So if I'm leaning against that energy band like this, and you measure my weight before and during the process, you'll find that suddenly stones go off. But as soon as you go back, you'll go back to normal weight. So no megalithic diet there that could answer a lot of problems, unfortunately. But it does seem to make you lighter or feel lighter. So I think our ancient ancestors could manipulate those energy points and make the stone appear lighter and easier to transport by playing around with that energy band. Now, when you look to the frequencies of the earth currents that entwine the ley lines, there's a frequency that prevails, and that's 25 hertz. If the ancients could manipulate earth energy, which I think they could easily, yeah, and they could make that 25 kilohertz, then you've got the frequency of levitation. And wherever you have those earth currents entering a site, you could move the stone along there. Do you see what I mean? You could manipulate the stone and use the frequencies coming out of the earth and transport stones along earth currents. Could be one interpretation. But you really need to prove or disprove that theory. And that would take money to do that.
Have you felt the energy of giant rock?
Where's giant rock?
Up the road.
No, I didn't know giant rock was up there. No, I haven't. Definitely, I certainly will. Sure.
I'm one of the people that work in the Alberta oil sands, and my particular crew is up there for 3 weeks at a time. We get a week off, and the lodge itself is, I don't know mileage or whatever, let's just say it's maybe 3 miles from the actual production plant, and then we have a lot of EMFs around us, and so we have a lot of problems sleeping and such. But I was just interested in, the mineral or, the oil aspect of it and how that might be affecting a lot of us up there.
Well, absolutely. That's not a good situation, and you have to work on your own health and things, and that's where I think an energy device like an ISIS pendulum can top you up easily, quickly, and effectively. Yeah, but it would require topping up. It wouldn't be one thing works all. Do you see what I mean? You'd have to have that energy device and clear the area, clear your home, clear yourself, and probably do that once a month, or maybe even more frequently than that. This is why these energy devices are really handy to have, because they allow us to self-heal.
Okay. So, but how is it that the oil, or I guess the bitumen or whatever that they're working to get out of the ground affecting, people up there?
Well, for one, it's the extraction. Yeah, and because, Gaia is living and breathing, say I started to suck the blood out of your body. That's oil coming out of Gaia. So you're going to get pockets that are poorly and pockets that need healing. So, I think any extraction, and that's what I said, unless it's really important to have water these days when it's a drought condition, obviously it's a good thing to bore, but to just bore randomly and to extract randomly, I don't think is a good idea, and it will hurt the planet. And then that ripples through the earth energy and grid lines and lays to other places. So you may be feeling that, but further on down the line, somebody else could be affected by that.
Okay. So as far as the device, do you actually need to be around that particular area, or just kind of use it like through intention?
You can use it absently and remotely, but it's generating that particular frequency that Egyptian pendulum does, which is ultra white. You can program it to other colors, all 12 colors, but ideally you should be there. Boots on the ground would be the best effect. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Where do I get a pendulum or a dowsing? Where would you recommend device?
Well, I've got some really good handmade pendulums on me that I've stashed underneath a table somewhere because they were so heavy I couldn't carry them around. So if we go out into the foyer at the vending section where you registrate, that's where I've stashed them.
Okay.
Because there was no one there this morning to tell me where to go.
How much is it? I'd like to buy one.
They're $40.
Yeah, I'd like one.
Okay, you've got one with your name on.
Okay.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. Okay, well, that's where, if I don't have a vending table, I will be at the workshop with them. Okay?
Could you briefly describe what you're going to do at the workshop?
Sorry?
Could you briefly describe what your workshop's going to cover today?
The workshop's going to cover how to dowse quickly, simply, and effectively so that you can then find things. That's the art of dowsing. It's called information dowsing, directional dowsing, and tracking. Once you've got those 3 core skills, you can dowse. It's just a case of what you dowse for. Do you see what I mean? So I'm going to teach you how to dowse. I'm going to show you how to dowse for one thing, a couple of grid systems, for example. But the idea is I'm going to show you how to dowse that one thing, and from that one thing, you should be able to find quite a few things. Yep. And also with the Egyptian pendulum dowsing, how to use ultra-white is what I'm going to cover.
Okay, and that's the one at 4:15.
That's the one at 4:15 today.
And then, do you have a reading list that you recommend for newbies like myself?
Yeah, well, I'm going to promote myself because I got some books. But if you want, other authors, one of the really good tried and tested one is Hamish Miller's book, The Sun and the Serpent. That's very good. He was the one that discovered the ley systems rather than just the ley lines. And that really did change. It was a game changer because then we realized there's far, far more than just leys. Yep, so are we done? 1 minute. Yay!
Okay, this might be a little off topic, but it's something I'm curious about. So with green building, eco building, the geothermal is a way to go. But then I read that the water going through the lines and constantly recycled puts really black energy in the house and can make you lethargic. What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, again, it's about trying to bring that balance into being. And sometimes these devices are very good, but sometimes you need something to counteract that. Once you have those 2 things in play, you can counteract the bad to the good. Yeah, so that's what you need to do. You need to get an energy device that can counteract that energy, and then you're back on the straight and narrow. You wouldn't need that. You would just need a very small pendulum to clear every now and again. That's how simple it is. That's what they were doing in ancient Egypt. They were topping up and topping up and topping up. Okay, so I think it's very, very simple. Dowsing isn't complicated. And even when I look at some YouTube presentations, I've been dowsing for 35 years, I think, what the hell? They make it sound so complicated. And if you have 3 simple techniques, I can get you finding anything within 25 minutes. Awesome. Thank you. You're welcome.